bubble bread. Hello and welcome to this episode of Bake It Up a Notch. I'm Erin McDowell and I am very excited for today's episode because we are diving deep into monkey, pull apart, and bubble breads. These style of breads are made with some kind of soft, fluffy dough tossed in something flavorful, and they can go sweet or savory. But the most important thing is they are served warm when they are ooey gooey and so delicious. There's a lot of ways to get creative with this recipe, and I am so excited to dive in. In fact, we're gonna make 5 different kinds, some sweet and some savory. I can't wait to get started, so let's get baking. You can make pull-apart, monkey, and bubble breads with lots of different kinds of doughs. In fact, one of the most fun, easy ways is to use kind of refrigerated items in the grocery store. Those are very common with this type of recipes. People might use refrigerated pizza dough or refrigerated biscuit dough. I've also written recipes using homemade pizza dough, and in my book, Savory Baking, I have a few varieties that use homemade biscuit dough. Those are really fun, but my favorite way is to use a soft, fluffy, yeasted dough for these kinds of breads, and that's what we're gonna make today. I worked really hard to develop this monkey dough recipe for my book, Savory Baking. It is really easy to make, uses just a few special ingredients, and it is so easy to handle. Plus, it bakes up beautifully. It's soft and fluffy on the inside and gets beautifully golden brown on the outside. The first thing we're gonna need is some warm water. Now let's add our instant yeast into the water, just to give that a chance to start to dissolve while we work on some of these other things. It just needs to sit for a few minutes. We also are going to want to warm our milk up. So I've got in my favorite little butter warmer. It's also a wonderful milk warmer when you're using small quantities like we are for this recipe. I've warmed it up. You basically just need it at around 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. You can also do this in the microwave in a liquid measuring cup or some other microwave safe container. So let's now put all of our dry ingredients in with what we've got in here. We've got our flour, our sugar. I just suddenly wasn't sure. We've also got our dry milk powder. I love dry milk for enriched doughs because it adds all the benefits of milk, but in dry form, so it doesn't affect the hydration at all. It helps keep things softer, fluffier, and it also helps the dough brown better. Just giving that a brief stir, and then we're gonna add the rest of our wet ingredients. We've got our egg, some melted butter, of course our warm milk, and then the last ingredient is sort of a special one. It's just a little bit of sour cream. If you don't have sour cream, you could use creme fraiche, you could use yogurt. It adds this really slight tanginess to the dough, which is so good in both sweet and savory applications. We'll start by mixing the dough on low speed for 4 minutes, then we'll raise the speed to medium and we'll mix it for 3 minutes more until the dough is very smooth. Okay, our dough is looking really nice. Right now it looks kind of sticky, but this dough is so easy to work with after its rise. So let's get it into a lightly greased bowl. We're gonna cover it with some greased plastic wrap or a kitchen towel. We'll let this dough rise until it is pretty much double in size. It's going to be really nice and fluffy, 45 minutes to 1 hour. The finishing elements of the monkey bread, pull apart, or bubble bread are really what take it into that decadent territory. It takes it from just being a delicious yeasted dough into something ooey gooey and so delicious. The most classic monkey bread is made with a combination of melted butter and cinnamon sugar. The dough is tossed in both, and then it's baked in the pan where it becomes caramelized, gooey, so delicious. Today we're gonna be doing a number of different things because I also wanna show you all the different ways you can get creative with these breads. So a classic monkey bread is sort of made one way, just by rolling out the dough and cutting it into little bite-sized pieces before tossing it with the other components. But you can get kind of creative here. You can use cut shapes. We can even bake them in some different pans. So let's start with one of the most classic ways of doing it for our cinnamon sugar caramel monkey bread. I've got a little bit of flour here. I'm just gonna put it down on my surface for working with my dough. And we'll turn our dough that has risen and gotten nice and puffy out onto our work surface. Look how soft and supple this dough is. Look at this. Ta-da! Love this dough. Just a little flour on the dough. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna roll out the dough to be about 1/2 inch thick. We don't want it too thin, and we're going to cut it into these little bite-sized pieces. And the whole point of monkey bread and pull-apart breads, bubble breads, is that you're going to pull them apart piece by piece. So you can kind of get creative about how big you want those pieces to be. And I'm not worried about the dough being super precise in shape because, again, that's the nature of this. It's kind of random. We're cutting them different sizes. We're all tossing them in one pan. They're gonna bake in there together and become one beautiful loaf. And then you can take something like a pastry wheel, or you can take your bench knife, either one, and we're just gonna cut it into strips about 1 inch wide. And see there, I just cut that strip way bigger than that strip, and I am not worried about it at all. You're not gonna be able to tell. Whoever's gonna get that piece is gonna be like, ooh, I got a slightly bigger piece of monkey bread. That is my lucky day. Great day, monkey bread day. Now let's cut across this way to make our little bite-sized square pieces. Now we're going to toss these in our cinnamon sugar to coat, and we'll pile them into a greased bundt pan. I'm also going to use this method with our garlic herb skillet bread. So let's get both of those shaped and in the pan, and then we'll talk about even more shapes for your monkey bread. One of my favorite ways to kind of bake these breads up a notch is by using a cut shape when I'm assembling. So I'm gonna roll out this dough in front of me. This one's gonna be for my citrus sugar pull-apart loaf. Let's use a circle cutter. We're going to cut circles of dough. Another thing I like to do is cut them into squares, larger squares by hand. And if you cut a dough piece into a square and you fold it in half, it's really great lined up in a loaf pan. I talk about this in my book, Savory Baking. Don't worry about them being perfect, and you'll see why in a moment. We're actually gonna fold these rounds of dough. And the idea is when you pull apart the bread, instead of pulling apart a little individual bite-sized piece, it's almost like you'll be pulling apart a sheet of dough that's your portion. Once we have cut all of the rounds, we can re-roll the dough as many times as we need just to get all of our pieces. No dough being wasted here. What we're going to do, we've got my beautiful citrus vanilla sugar here. Let's take each piece of dough, dunk it, positively
dunk it
in butter, and then coat it very generously in citrus sugar, like that, okay? Then we're going to fold it in half, which is going to give us like 2 little ridges. We're going to then put that into our cake pan, and we're gonna start building those all around. We're kind of gonna make a spiral. After I get this one assembled, I also want to show you a savory version using the same method. One of the best parts about making monkey, bubble, and pull-apart breads is that they're messy. So like, get your kids involved, let them like get butter and sugar and whatever on their hands, and have them help you assemble this, because I'm making a mess, but I'm also having a lot of fun. A lot of people think of monkey bread as being made in a bundt pan, and that is one wonderful way to make it, but it can really be made in so many different types of pans, different shapes, different sizes. I've got the citrus sugar, beautiful one here in just a round cake pan. I have the gooey cheese monkey bread in a 9x9 square pan. One of the things I think that would be so great is to do a double batch of any of these in a 9x13 pan. A skillet is another awesome choice because as long as it's oven safe, it can go straight from the oven to the table, and it's even going to help to keep the monkey bread warm in transit, which is kind of cool. And then you can really use any size baking pan you have. This is a cool one that I found here, and I just loved the shape and size of it for our really cute little assembled onion stuffed monkey bread, pull apart bread. So I'm gonna use that one. Any oven safe pan, really any size, and you can really have a lot of fun and get creative with it. So the next one we're going to do is going to be stuffed with cheese, which is an awful lot of fun. I started by just roughly dividing my dough into 30 pieces. We're gonna have 30 pieces of dough and 30 pieces of cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and take each piece of dough, place cheese inside, like so, toss it in this delicious seasoned butter, then in this fluffy bed of parm, and then into the pan it goes. After you assemble your monkey and pull apart breads, you want to cover them loosely with a clean kitchen towel or some greased plastic wrap and let them rise until they're visibly puffy, 45 minutes to 1 hour. At that point, you can add any finishing touches to them, like our onion stuffed one. I'm gonna put some sesame seeds on top before baking. I just love this one as sort of a party appetizer because I can have it assembled before the party starts, rising. I can pop it into the oven and bring it out and serve it warm. And each little piece is one complete component. So it's got the bread, it already has the dip. No one's having to touch lots of things. All they have to do is pull their piece out. And then remember our caramelly cinnamon sugar monkey bread? I made this, it's not even a proper caramel, it's just brown sugar, cream, butter. We've boiled it and stirred it for a few minutes, and I'm gonna pour that over it now before we bake it. And in the oven, some of this is gonna kind of combine with our beautiful pieces, but some of it is going to sink to the bottom and sort of form, it's like a self-saucing, self-glazing monkey bread situation. And that is one great way you can finish monkey bread. Sometimes they have toppings put on after they come out of the oven, like, you know, an icing or a glaze. All of ours today are sweet enough that that's just not really going to be an issue. They bake at 350 degrees until you start to see them getting golden brown. Once they come out, you're gonna wanna let them cool for a few minutes in the pan, but you're definitely gonna wanna unmold them or serve them while they're still warm, because that's when monkey, pull apart, and bubble breads are at their very best. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Bake It Up a Notch, where we talked about all things monkey, pull apart, and bubble breads. I've loved this episode because there are so many ways you can really bake this up a notch, truly. So if you have any ideas, be sure you get in the comments and tell us what you're baking. Use hashtag Bake It Up a Notch because I love to see what you're doing in your own kitchens. As always, all of these recipes are available on food52.com, or you can find them in the video description below. Hey, you know who else loves monkey bread? My brother Willie. And he's in an amazing episode of Bake It Up a Notch where we tour barbecue joints in Kansas City. So head over here, check it out.